Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Thank you so much for joining me. This is our new schedule. So, from now on, Monday through Friday, I will be coming here live at 12 p.m. Eastern or around that time on Twitter, on Substack, and on, of course, YouTube. So, wherever you're watching, I really would appreciate if you could follow if you're on YouTube. So please subscribe, please like, please share. The main idea here is not to gather a bunch of likes for my egoistic purposes, but to teach the algorithms to show actual news to more people who are interested in factual information. My main intention is to provide actual news to you so you can make better decisions. All right. And of course, my name is Olga, known as OnestPress across the socials. I hope you had a peaceful weekend. And my job this morning or this afternoon to catch you up on everything that did happen up until today and sort of preview what will be happening, later on Monday. All right. Now, as always, please comment, please ask questions. I really would love for you to be part of conversation. I love answering your questions. Also, if there's any breaking news that are sort of dropping while I'm here, let's discuss. Okay. So first, let's talk about the White House. Now, if you perhaps have missed it, we had some weird photos and updates that sort of were published on Friday, but mainly also throughout the weekend. And we no longer have a rose garden. This is a fact. The rose garden looks now as a parking lot or graveyard. You decide what it, upper part or upper picture is what it's supposed to look like and what it did look like before. And now it's this. The picture, the lower one, is not in black and white. It's actual real. It's everything, this. Also, don't forget that we're going to be getting a $200 million ballroom coming from Gilded Age that will be sort of built right next to the White House. And as you see here, essentially, if you have ever imagined the White House, or perhaps you even have been there, this is the West Wing. It has the path where the presidents walk, right? And the Oval Office. So if this here is true, whatever they published, they aim to be, are they taking away the Oval Office? Are they taking away the entire Rose Garden, which I guess now they laid the floor for this new construction? Because that part where the ballroom's supposed to be, that's supposed to fit 695 people, cost $200 million. Trump says he is spending his own money on it. I think it's our taxpayer money that's been spent on it. But, anyway, it's devastating. Now, the main idea, according to Trump again, that to allow women to wear stilettos in rainy conditions. I honestly lost 3 pairs of shoes, stilettos, at the White House covering the events. But this happens to anybody until you learn to wear sneakers or change into boots. Nobody cares about your feet when you are at those events. Nobody even looks at them. So, but again, garden is way better than the graveyard. But who am I to judge? Now, come and take it. Come and take it was the answer of the Democrats in Texas to Governor Abbott, who tried to penalize them for leaving Texas, to postpone or hopefully even prohibit this vote on restructuring Texas in order to allow Republicans to gain 5 more seats in 2026, of course, in the House. Now, to block a Republican redistricting push, 57 of 62 Texas Democrats fled the state. Most of them went to Chicago. And of course, Spitzker was very nice to welcome them there. Their absence stalls a special session aimed at flipping 5 Democratic U.S. House seats in 2026. Now, Governor Abbott threatened them to charge them $500 per day. This would be some type of fines for for this possible expulsion. And well, Democrats responded with this statement, very short: "Come and take it." We'll see what will result, out of it. Abbott said if you're not there by 3 p.m. Eastern, which will be in about 3 hours or 2 hours and 49 minutes to be exact, we'll see what will happen then. Now, the GOP can't pass the bill without a quorum, right? And then Texas AG Ken Paxton said on Steve Bannon's podcast that ultimately they have to come home, and that they see that this will be postponed but not sort of derailed completely. Well, seeing is believing. Now, in other news, remember when President Biden, now former President Biden, really, really cared about veterans, U.S. veterans? And remember when we had issues, or, we had uncovered issues, especially in the Air Force or U.S. Army in general, U.S. forces in general, there were some issues with women being raped or having any sexual harassment. And so these cases led to policies passed by, pushed by former President Biden in order to allow women to seek abortion regardless to any circumstances. So essentially, these rules would be applicable in any state. Even those now 20 states that have very strict rules or even prohibit abortion. Now, this Pentagon, or this current DOD management, so to speak, they're restructuring, of course, the Department of Veterans Affairs, but they also filed a proposed rule revoking access to abortion and counseling except when mother's life is at risk. But they do not consider now incest or rape as a reason for abortion, for allowing women to seek abortion. Now, this completely reverses the Biden era policies and protections that were applicable to women there. But the public comment period opens today. And so if you're able to, again, express your voice and fight against it, please do so. Now, what we have seen yesterday, and I put it out on several platforms, there was this very interesting picture that featured Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, that, of course, he owns Palantir, but he essentially pushes J.D. Vance, and he sort of installed J.D. Vance into position of vice president of the United States. Peter Thiel and Musk as well. Now, Peter Thiel is very well known for being, of course, very much on the right. He himself has a husband, but he is anti-LGBTQI plus, policies or even rights, right? Equality. So a very weird individual. But then yesterday, the former chancellor of Austria, a disgraced chancellor who had to resign in 2021 after, alleged corruption and sort of stealing money, also working with Russians as well. There was a lot of, they call it conspiracy theories, but a lot of doings and a lot of ways to allow Russian FSB intelligence to work in Austria and to manipulate public opinion, if you will. And so he had to resign, and then he was at the party, with Peter Thiel. You see Peter Thiel here on the right. And this was posted by the chancellor, the disgraced chancellor of Austria, former chancellor. Kurz is his name, Sebastian Kurz. He's on the left. Now, in the middle, you see Orban. Orban is the leader of Hungary. That's the one who vetoes any aid for Ukraine. He is pro-Russian. He is anti-EU, even though he is part of EU, and he gets a lot of funding from the EU. And so EU is sort of juggling with this policy. Shall we prohibit him from voting or vetoing decisions because he's on the receivers? And so we'll see what will come out of it. But it's very interesting, composition here. What stuns me personally that it is posted so publicly. Yes, it wasn't a life story, but this Sebastian Kurz is also known for being sort of neo-Nazi, if you will, being ultra-right. I guess that's the new slogan for it, or label for it. But Peter Thiel being there right now, it's an interesting development. But certainly tells you that he's active and that these folks are aligned and everything is very much interconnected. Russia and Austria and Hungary and disrupting EU and prohibiting aid, American aid going to Ukraine and aiding Russia herewith, right? Lynn says, hey, Lynn, go Democrats. Exactly. Hey, Stephen. Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon. Hello, guys. Hey, James. Hello, everybody. Tony says, old friends. Exactly, right? To Peter Thiel. Yeah, old friends, and who knows what else, unites them. As I mentioned last time on Friday, was it Thursday? When I was live last time, that Peter Thiel was approached by Russian intelligence, FSB, in 2018 at a party in Germany. And so since then, he had several interactions with Russians. Now, certainly courts as well. Hungary, obviously, right? He goes to Putin to kiss the ring, every now and then. Now, as to Trump and kissing Putin's ring, Trump is sending Witkoff, right, our special envoy to Russia that meets with Putin without bringing anybody from American team, that trusts Putin's translators, who then turn out to be FSB agents and whatnot. So he is being dispatched, if you will, from Washington to Moscow. And so Putin is awaiting a meeting with him on Wednesday. Now, as to Russian newspapers, they're putting out the statements that, yeah, Witkoff will gonna come, and yeah, we have this sort of discussions, but nothing will come out of it. Our interest is to finish our special operation in Ukraine. I know I'm doing this a lot today, but these are the times, forgive me. So they're not expecting anything, but then today, Putin, through his spokesperson, Peskov, said that Putin is willing to sit down and negotiate or talk to Zelensky once the preparation is over. And again, I'm back with quotation marks. He's buying time. There is nothing that Russia is willing to negotiate about. They're lying. They're flipping everything 180. They don't give any rat's parts, about Ukraine or about any type of negotiation. But now they're buying time. They're buying time because Ukraine is not getting Patriot systems. And some of folks on X were fighting me when, somebody said that Trump is so clear about Ukraine and defending Ukraine. And he, sent weapons to Ukraine and provided aid. And I said, oh, I missed that part. Well, U.S. might be sending ammunition because U.S. makes money with that. But what about Patriot systems? And yes, I'm talking about Patriot systems because Ukraine needs defense. Ukrainian skies need defense because people are dying. Civilians are dying in dozens every single night. In the capital of Kiev, in the Kharkiv, my birth city, in Odessa, in other cities all across Ukraine. And so, of course, those systems are very much needed. And then the Biden administration did allocate. What does it mean? It planned how to get it there. It paid for it, right? Or allocated money and Ukraine bought it back from Pentagon, whatever that PDA, the Presidential Drawdown Authority, whatever that, the function of it was. But the aid was allocated, specifically 30 Patriot systems arrived in Poland as recent as a couple of weeks ago, and Trump delayed it. And what came out of it is that just a few of those Patriot systems will be now bought by Germany So US will be paid again. And this will arrive at the earliest, it would be in spring 2026. So please don't tell us that something has been provided to Ukraine when it comes to defense. Weapons, maybe, parts, because they have to, fix the tanks and whatnot. Ammunition, yes. But when we talk about defense systems, no. And that is a very strategic aid that Ukraine desperately needs. So Putin is buying time because Ukraine is in a bad position defensively. And Putin is going into offense. And he has very limited time until September because of the rain, because of the conditions that would be detrimental to the Russian army. And by the way, speaking of the Russian army, the HIV cases among Russian soldiers have risen to up to 2,000%. And this all happens through unprotected situation. Right? And because Russia, as a country of traditional values, has dismantled the authorities that would be handling HIV cases, tracking them, providing medication, and sort of treating people, these cases are now going crazy among the or rising as crazy as fast as possible among the Russian soldiers, and there is nobody to treat them, to track it, or even provide any type of relief or medication. This becomes even more so dangerous when Russians are stepping into Ukraine, doing things to Ukrainian hostages, and so this becomes a bigger issue. But again, this is Russian world, so to speak. Now, I wanted to share some defense news. Pentagon allocated $7.8 billion in U.S. missile contracts, and this was awarded to produce hundreds of JASSM, right, and AMRAAM missiles, AMRAAM. Maybe I mispronounced it. Now, these are three major, and also what they did, it's Haxas is doing it personally. He's doing he's sort of providing a shake-up to the Air Force. And folks in the Air Force are freaking out about it. And the problem there is that the three major four-star commands, right, USAFE, or AMC and AFMC, may be downgraded to 3-star as part of the general reduction in top brass. And so, again, disrupting the Air Force. I joined a couple of Zoom calls this morning. This is a very big issue within the Air Force, and we'll see if Haxas will push it through. Now, what is good, though, since we're having the hurricanes and the floods and earthquakes and whatnot, but the weather data is safe for now. Well, after pushback, the Pentagon will continue sharing satellite data crucial to hurricane forecasting. Well, thank you for that, right? We don't have anything else, but at least we're going to have the data. Now, FEMA is building concentration camps. We don't really have brass that covers the reality. They only want to bend the knee to the dear leader, but at least we're going to have the satellite data. Now, as to National Guard in Los Angeles, remember Trump sending 2,000 troops to LA to sort of navigate the protests, right, that actually were within the couple of blocks. And so he sent 2,000 National Guard troops to protect federal buildings, which is essentially one building. And I spoke to people who live there. They're like, this is just obnoxious. And so ultimately 250 National Guard troops will remain in Los Angeles protecting that specific building. Now, let's check your comments. Lynn says, wow to what? Let me know. Okay, now, as to, again, defense news, but this is Poland now, and this is very interesting. Remember that Trump told everybody that in NATO, right, to our NATO allies and to Rutte, who called him or referred to him as daddy watching kids fight and whatever before he intervenes, ultimately, the result of that NATO summit was that U.S. is pushing for each country, the ally, to invest 5% of their GDP into defense, right? Of course, Poland is part of it. And Trump's idea was that all this 5% of every single country's GDP, which, by the way, the idea is to aim for it by 2032. But by 2029, they will be again revisiting the idea, the need for it. So all of that is bogus. Anyway, but Poland certainly has allocated as much as they could from their GDP to defense, because if Ukraine, God forbid, were to fall, Poland is next. But it's not buying from US. And what we learned today is that Poland buys 180 more K2 tanks in $6.7 billion deal from South Korea. And so 61 of the South Korean built tanks will be made in Poland, will arrive in Poland. By 2030, Poland is set to have 1,100 tanks, more than Germany, France, the UK, and Italy combined. And certainly Poland is very, very clear about their opportunity to join the war against Russia, because again, if Ukraine will not be getting any abilities to defend itself, well, especially if Witkoff, and this is sort of Trump's idea, to propose to Putin to take away all the land that Russia has occupied and more, right? To offer Russia Crimea and Donbass and all the regions that pretty much Putin wants, plus create some region that would be sort of neutralized, and which would include, of course, Kharkiv, that again, my birth city, that Russia has, or Putin personally considered Russian, and so if that is what US will be offering, and then Putin is now signaling that, yes, he wants to sit down and negotiate. So if US will be bartering for this type of deal, then Ukraine is even in a worse condition than it was before, because now it's being pushed by US, right? We're not going to provide aid to you unless you agree to give up your territory. And we know when a gangster comes in and you are willing to give up your territory, this is just the beginning until he owns you, and then pretty much, disrespects your sovereignty till the end, right? HIV in regards to Russia troops. First time hearing that morale was just super low and probably taking crazy drugs. Yes, Lynn, absolutely, yeah, 2,000%. This is incredible. Now, as to Mexico, today, President of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, she said that U.S. and Mexico will be negotiating by Friday. She says they're aiming to have some type of security deal. And so they will be, they're negotiating intelligence sharing to address drug trafficking and fentanyl. And this could pave the way for a new trade deal amid Trump's tariff threats. As we know, although Trump imposed tariffs on Canada, but he gave Mexico some time to negotiate, as much as he gave or extended the negotiation with China as well. We'll see what will happen. Now, as to Canada, yesterday Prime Minister Carney visited the port of Vancouver in Canada, which is the primary link to Asia, and Canada is restructuring its trade. It's prioritizing trade with Asia, China specifically, and this port is also fourth largest port in North America. So I do have a video of him touring the port. Let me see. Here it goes. As you see here, he was there in Vancouver, and he stayed in Vancouver as well to attend the Pride Parade. And this might have been just regular type of video that would not be making any rounds. As for me, we are in the United States. We are very much limited in expressing ourselves or in the rights, and this is just the beginning. So it's very refreshing to see. Take a look. And I know some of you have posted, look, stop advertising Carney because he's taking money from LGBTQ and women and whatnot. As far as I understand, Prime Minister in Carney or any Prime Minister in Canada is not passing laws. The Parliament does, right? So please show me the facts, and then we will be reading. And certainly, it's not my job to advocate to for anybody. But when I see something that really is positive, I will certainly share it. I love the song. Me too. Okay, the imagery of fentanyl pro. Exactly right. Right. Well, one of my favorite songs. Yes, Tidy. Yes, Tidy Whitey is so cute. Yeah, I love it too. And they added that song too, so which is really came from them. Now we talked about the HIV cases. Now, and by the way, this 2000% HIV cases, in case you're wondering where this came from, this was reported by Carnegie Endowment, though the Kremlin crackdowns on NGOs and sexual health groups are worsening the crisis, right? That's what I just mentioned. Now, also about Russia, remember they had this big earthquake, the 8.8, or yeah. That happened last week. When was it? Thursday, Friday. So until then, they kept having aftershocks, and of course, they were anticipating the tsunami wave, which thankfully was not. It did not manifest in something that was predicted or anticipated. But as a result of this earthquake, the Kamchatka volcano erupted for the very first time, and this is the video in case you haven't seen it yet. It's pretty impressive. Now, the Krashenikov volcano erupted on August 2nd for the first time ever, and the ash clouds reached 5 to 6 kilometers high, which is incredible. Now, again, connected to Russia, but more so about Trump's nuclear sub repositioning threats to Russia. What was it all about? Russia has a former president. Now, how did you think? Well, Putin is the president for, since Ice Age. But when Putin was still paying attention to Russian constitution before he changed it, he was the president for 2 terms as allowed. And then he installed Medvedev, who is sort of, when you think about alpha males, he's the opposite. And he's supposed to be president for 1 term because the Russian constitution did prohibit consecutive terms. I guess this is the idea what Trump tries to do here. But in any way, he was president for a term, and Putin was vice president, well, equivalent of vice president there. And then they had another election, and Putin won. And there was this little moment where Medvedev was it was kind of felt that he started feeling very confident as president, having Putin as his number two. But he did not dare to push Putin away or not to play by the rules. And so Putin became president, changed the constitution. This is the story. Since then, Putin is the ruler until he passes. And so Medvedev is the head of National Security Council, sort of equivalent of, we had the Waltz guy here before he now tries to be installed into UN, or as ambassador to UN, but, or Sullivan, Jake Sullivan was the head advisor of national security for Biden. So that's his position. And so he was tweeting at Trump saying that, stop the rhetoric about the secondary tariffs on Russia. We will not stop until our goals in Ukraine or with Ukraine are achieved. To which Trump said, well, stop threatening us, nuclear this and that. Zelensky. What's his face? Medvedev replied that, well, don't forget that we have this dead hand, referring to the dead hand is apparently a term for nuclear weapons to be activated if the leadership of Russia is eliminated, so to speak. And so as a result, Trump said, I'm repositioning 2 nuclear submarines, directing them towards Russia, because we cannot sort of, keep talking about nuclear threats or keep passing nuclear threats to each other. Now, truth be told, U.S. nuclear submarines are monitoring Russia and are near Russia. by definition. Same as Russian nuclear submarines are close to US. This is a reality and it's a fact. So to say that there were two submarines redirected, repositioned, this is bogus, but it did make rounds in the news and certainly did make rounds in Russia. Now, to which Putin said, quote, everyone should be very, very careful with the nuclear rhetoric. Now, for you to visualize who Medvedev is, and so next time you see him as tweeter or you see his tweets and you hear about him, I want you to remember this very interesting video. So this is Medvedev when he was at that leadership position, and he loved dancing to a Russian song called American Boy. Take a look. The little guy moving, that's Medvedev. The guy in gray. Yeah? That's Medvedev. That guy on the right with the weird moves. That's Medvedev. So anytime you hear his tweets, visualize this video. That's the guy who apparently wants to blast everybody into, oblivion. Now, what is real and less funny as the dancing, Russia responded to all of this, of course, with deadly missile strikes against Ukraine. Anything Trump tweets that Russia doesn't like, they take out their anger on Ukrainian civilians. Now, the good news is Ukraine retaliated with drone attacks on Sochi, which is Russian side. Now, Trump has also now, today, this morning, promised to raise tariffs on India because he says India is not, should not be allowed to sponsor Russian regime that kills Ukrainians. Okay, this is a good statement. Now, what we need to know is that India did postpone the oil purchases from Russia. But again, postpone to see how will U.S. react, what will be those tariffs, will there be any tariffs, and how that situation will look like. Now, before that, India said that they will be making their ultimate the decision on their own that concerns their, so to speak, trade and they called it national security. They referred to oil purchases as part of their national security. Same thing was for China as well. So if we talk about secondary tariffs, China is the biggest sponsor, if you will, of the Russian regime. Without China, Russia would not be fighting in Ukraine. Let's just be frank. But again, China said we will be deciding about our energy security on our own. Thank you very much. And if you want to impose tariffs, ultimately it will hurt your own customers, right? What are secondary tariffs? Countries that are purchasing oil from Russia, let's say China, the products from China would be facing up to 500% tariffs if they are selling to US. So essentially, whatever you bought from China for $1 is now going to be plus 500% to us, right? This price will be bypassed to importers and ultimately American customers because China is sponsoring Russian regime. So essentially, if we were to kind of summarize it, well, then we be paying more, right? Well, where is this 500% additional charge? Where is this going to go to? Of course, to Washington, D.C. What are they going to use it for? As I mentioned last time, enrichment is an interesting story, but what will this money be used for? Because we're cutting Medicaid, we're cutting any type of aid. We are restructuring FEMA to build, again, concentration camps. We are not providing any aid or any type of services that the government should supposed to spend money on, but somehow Washington is celebrating their enrichment, right? In billions of dollars per month, again, paid by us because we overpaid for the goods. And so the secondary tariffs will punish us, not really anyone. And, it's in China's interest to keep Russia fighting in Ukraine because that postpones their retaliation as to Taiwan. Now, Taiwanese prime leadership altogether has warned a couple of days ago that China is ready to invade Taiwan. What will ultimately Pentagon do? We'll see. We do consider Taiwan our ally, but will we fight for it in this current government or regime, if you will? It has to be. We have to see about that. Now, I'll check your comments. Since Ice Age, yeah, because you know that little squirrel in the Ice Age? That's what I imagine Putin to be. The one that was running with the nut. That's him with his nuclear nut. By the way, hit the like to support this. Yeah, Stephen, thank you. Thank you so much. If you hit the like, then other people will get to see the video. That's what I was thinking. There's already subs there, is what my military friends told me. Exactly. I mean, we have submarines everywhere. It's just Russia has submarines in the Indo-Pacific, also close to our East Coast and West Coast. Like, it's not, anything. Can't unsee that. Oh, you guys reacting to the dance video. Yeah, it's very interesting. Put Trump next to Medvedev. That's going to be a hell of a party. I feel like Trump won't do anything to China. Maybe he'll respond in 2 weeks. Maybe. Ultimately, that's what I envision Trump to be. And I wish the media would cover him as such. It's not a dictator with the ideology, if you will, right? If you think about Stalin, if you think about Gaddafi, if you think about Hitler, that ideology, and they had a structure that they built through years, right? They restructured their societies, they created public opinion, they weaponized, right? Everything pretty much, and they first of all created this hate within the nation. Now this Trump did. He openly referred today, he gave this interview about panicants, right? The Republicans that are panicking about tariffs. And he said, you are playing right into the hand of the enemy being the Democrats. And I thought the president is the president of everyone, but apparently he's president of the MAGAville and everybody else is the enemy, which does explain why the enemy is now being detained, stolen off the streets, and then deported to a third country that they never even came from. So all that aside, and again, the enemy is not going to be provided FEMA aid in case of a flood or earthquake or hurricane or whatever. But again, GOP will be, or whatever, the MAGAville folks will be suffering as well, but who cares? They're in the cult, so they probably will see it as, some type of blessing. Anyway, but my point is, as to tariffs, coming back to secondary tariffs, China is not sweating it. Neither does India, because they know that they will be, first of all, they're purchasing goods from Russia at face value. Like Russia and China essentially told Russia, what we're buying from you in terms of oil will be literally the price that it costs you to produce. They're not overpaying anything. Now, if China would think, can US, shift super fast, rapidly to avoid buying our products, and by what? By producing in America and make the goods American? No, we can't. Nobody will be able to build factories, just over sudden and to produce everything that we do consume. And we are very, oriented into this fast purchase type of culture, right? We're purchasing something that is cheap, it's it breaks down, we purchase something more, we're not fixing, we're buying new, right? So the consumerism is very high here, so we cannot shift very fast. We will be still purchasing from China, and if something was costing $1 and will be now $5, we still will for some time, right? Until we won't be able, until our purchasing power will go down. The media never covers the 1,500% drug discount. Yeah, exactly. I don't know what that means. Trump came up yesterday again with this 1,500, 1,600, 1,700 discount on drugs. I don't know. We're going to be paid to take drugs? Give me all the ibuprofen and Advil that you have. If you're going to pay me to take it, please. But altogether, it's just obnoxious, it's just stupid. Unless what he means, and again, I don't want to whitewash it, because you can't take, let's say somebody is in the cuckoo hospital and says, I'm Napoleon. And, and you're like, well, but let's dive into DNA and the history of this, or family history of this patient. Maybe their grand somebody was related to Napoleon. Maybe that's why they're saying I'm Napoleon. That would be just whitewashing, just sickness, right? And that's what we're doing here. If somebody says there's 16% discount on drugs, it just, per cent, right? Per 100, it just doesn't work. Unless, again, if we were to whitewash it or try to get into his way of thinking, or anybody who told him to say this, and he's just repeating, is that the drugs were overpriced, let's say threefold, and now they're going to cost what they're supposed to cost, which then he says it's a discount of 300%, because it's going to be 1/3 of the overpriced price, but then it's nowhere near 1,500%. So let's not dive into this. Okay, so good news. Ukraine captured Russia's nuclear submarine secrets. And I have all the proof. So this comes from Ukrainian intelligence services. They did capture, so those are the submarines here. Not yellow submarines, but still. Now, Ukraine's HUR, which is HUR, intelligence agency, seized classified data on Russia's Knyaz Pozharsky Bore A-class nuclear submarine. Now, the details include, and I have it here, full crew lists, ranks, and fitness data, combat manuals and duty logs, design vulnerabilities, and by the way, this is a translated version. And so the photos of the documents and charts are available, as you see here, and the sub was recently commissioned in Putin's presence and is central to Russia's nuclear deterrent. And they have all the data here. So I know it's not quite useful yet, but if in case, Ukraine would be really going into offensive and targeting those submarines, certainly that's a good development, right? If anything, this really hurts Russia and their reputation as, second world's second strongest, or whatever the case may be, the HIV army. Now, what I wanted to share with you. There's a channel, Ukrainian channel, United 24, and they posted about this specific issue, which really resonates with everything that does happen now. It really mirrors the situation. Remember, I would show you those articles by New York Times and would say, well, they're lying about Biden. They're lying about Ukraine. They're lying about this. Now, turns out this is not new. And this is something put together by United 24, but I wanted to draw your attention to it. So this is how the New York Times reporter hit Stalin's mass murders in Ukraine. Remember, Ukraine suffered from Holodomor in the 1930s, where people were starved to death. I know it personally from my father's grandmother. She was a survivor. And she told the stories, and I was blessed to meet her as a child, of course. And she told those stories where people, did horrible things, including cannibalism and just really horrific pictures. And she said that as a child, she was there and people would be just falling and just it was incredible. And millions of people died in Ukraine. Now, this is how New York Times covered it. So, as you see here, Walter Duranty, that's the guy, a Pulitzer-winning New York Times correspondent in Moscow during the 1920s and 1930s, was so trusted by Soviet authorities that Stalin granted him a rare exclusive interview in 1929. Today, he is known as a symbol of the cover-up of the Soviet-made famine known as Holodomor in 1932 to 1933. So in 1932, news of widespread hunger in Ukraine began to circulate within the Soviet Union, quickly capturing the attention of the Western press. British journalist Gareth Jones of The Times and Malcolm Muggeridge of The Guardian traveled secretly to the region, defying a Soviet travel ban to witness and report on the tragedy unfolding in Ukrainian villages. Now, at the time, the Soviet regime carried out a mass grain confiscations, forced collectivization, and sealed off villages to stop people from escaping or receiving aid. Now, although famine spread across several parts of the USSR, Ukraine suffered the most. People collapsed and died in the streets, and in some villages, starving families resorted to cannibalism. And as you see here, the dark red part, this is Ukrainian losses. And Ukrainian losses are between 4 to 7 million people exactly starved to death. And you see here Kazakh and there were Russians and Belarusians and other Soviet regions, but Ukraine suffered the most. And why it suffered the most, right? Because Ukraine, up until today, is known as the breadbasket of the world. There were so many farmers. And so what Stalin did is essentially took away their land, took away their farms, and made them pay for consuming a portion of what they produced. And so ultimately it became more and more expensive to even live on the farm that you previously owned. And then you could not anymore. And so then he would take away everything, all the grain that was, was in their capacity, and people were essentially starved to death. Now, once people were removed, then of course Stalin seized it. Now, for his reports on the USSR economy in the New York Times, Durante was awarded the Pulitzer Prize in 1932. And I have a video, again, produced by the channel. This is what he wrote. Take a look.
Durante for the New York Times, 1933.
Any report of a famine in Russia is today an exaggeration or malignant propaganda.
Meanwhile, he was writing this to his family.
Jones in a letter to his family, 1933.
I tramped for several days through villages in the Ukraine, and there was no bread there. Many children had swollen stomachs. Nearly all the horses and cows had died, and the people themselves were dying. The terror has increased tremendously, and the GPU, secret police, has almost full control.
Meanwhile, he writes this again for New York Times.
Durante for the New York Times, 1933.
There is no actual starvation or deaths from starvation, but there is widespread mortality from diseases due to malnutrition. In short, conditions are definitely bad in certain sections. The Ukraine, North Caucasus, and Lower Volga. The rest of the country is on short rations, but nothing worse. These conditions are bad, but there is no famine.
Now, by covering up Stalin's crimes, Durante played a direct role in enabling policies that led to the death of millions. Today, 29 countries have recognized the Holodomor of 1932-33 as a genocide against Ukrainian people. And then Ukrainian Americans urged the New York Times to call for the revocation of Durante's Pulitzer Prize. In response to public pressure, the paper asked historian Mark van Hagen to review his work in 2003. He found it biased, uncritical, and echoing Stalinist propaganda, concluding the prize should be revoked in the name of the Times' honor. To which then New York Times said they're not going to do it, arguing that there was insufficient evidence to prove that Durante had intentionally deceived his readers. And so that really mirrors, or at least rings the bell in what they're doing now. And this is the New York Times that people, grew up trusting. You grew up trusting as the source of the factual information. So let's please wake up. This is, it existed before and it will be. Sane washing. Exactly. Whitewashing, sane washing. I called whitewashing. It should be sane washing. You're right. My great-grandparents escaped the famine too, came to Canada. I heard the stories. Jared, thank you. Thank you so much. And I think we should be speaking about it, because when I hear this horrific, stories on podcasts by Gen Z when they are denying Holocaust and Holodomor and everything is sort of fake news and AI, it's not AI. And it did happen. And most importantly, it can happen anytime. And it's really, at least in the US, we're very close to, such thing. I also been sharing, Tidy Whitey says, with my Discord group on Blue Sky, we need news like yours where I don't have to check multiple sources. Such a breath of fresh air. Finally get facts. Thank you, Olga. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it so much. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Sick of the lies. We have to call things what they are. Exactly. Old wine in new bottles today. Exactly. Absolutely. As to New York Times. I've been studying history, and when they say it repeats itself, it rhymes. Exactly. Absolutely. And Stephen says, if it was not intentionally deceiving readers, it was bad reporting. Exactly. Right. And when it comes to the honor, where is the New York Times honor now? And when something is like obnoxious, I would post it online just to show you that it makes really no sense. And why are we? I'm not showing you the tweets or the videos about the jeans commercial, and I don't want to talk about even the commercial or Sweeney or whatever her name is. But the idea that the president of the United States would tweet about a young woman advertising jeans, and because she's a registered Republican, now he loves the commercial, and in the same tweet he harasses or says that he hates, again repeatedly says that he hates Taylor Swift. Why is this normal? Why do we still see it as, well, he's just like that, that locker room talk, boys will be boys. Boys will not be boys. This person is president of the United States for the second time. He's almost 80 years old. His grandchildren are almost at the same age. So why are we, again, sane washing, why are we even, consuming this as some type of news? And we keep sharing these tweets and we keep sharing those videos, and somehow it's making rounds. And it's really sickening that I have to post Trump's videos for my content on platforms, not Blue Sky, but other platforms, to even be seen. I will post Trump, it goes viral, hoping then that somebody will read the newsletter or watch the broadcast with the factual news, just trying to use it as a bait type of thing. Why do we need to do this? Because the algorithms are so, positioned to push any content that features Trump, good, bad, or the ugly. It just pushes him, and hence he's dominating the news cycle. So all we can do is not to do so. Well, we meaning media. Now, as to China and Brazil, quickly, tariff, Trump imposed 50% tariff on Brazil, as we know, spiking coffee prices for U.S. consumers. Now, meanwhile, China, and I have a proof here, it's from Reuters. China welcomed 183 Brazilian coffee sellers in a warm trade gesture. So, not, I think it's not too far from now that we will be buying coffee now from China, from Brazil through China. Now, as to Israel and Gaza, what we saw throughout the weekend, that the aid was airdropped by Canada first, then France, then Germany, and then UK. And, Israel would say that Hamas takes the aid away. Hamas would say we don't do it. Independent, NGOs would say that Hamas is not taking the aid away. But essentially, people did get aid finally. Now, what Hamas did yesterday, they released a video footage of an Israeli hostage, Eviatar David. It's an emaciated Israeli hostage. It prompted global outcry. He is suffering, obviously, from malnutrition. He was recorded digging his own grave. Of course, this is what Hamas does is criminal. The idea that, the Israeli government positioned it as to you're showing the pictures of dying children, but here's the hostage. He's digging his own grave. He's dying. He's being tortured. Why nobody talks about that? And then the big discussion erupted in, throughout the weekend online on social media, that people were questioning the scale, right? And of course, when you talk about human lives and you talk about hostages, we're not supposed to talk about scale, right? That less Israelis died than the Palestinians. one person dying is tragedy. And then, we're having this, I feel like, wrong discussions, right? When you position that, don't show me dying kids, here's a gentleman who's being tortured and he is dying. Why don't you talk about that? And others are fighting, well, but there's 30,000 children and here's one person or several people. I think we are missing the point of this discussion. I think what we need to focus on, and if somebody wants to go protest in favor of Gaza, obviously, or Palestine, and the two-state solution, which I think would be the idea or way out of this, you need to encourage Palestinians to speak up against Hamas. If they do so, then international community will provide security and even perhaps military aid. But before they do so, anything else would be a takeover. The problem is that Palestinians are suffering, and when Hamas came into power, and most importantly, when they dismantled the constitution and stayed in power, families had no way but to have their family members start working for Hamas. And so people are caught in this limbo as to Hamas is bad, but now my children or, brothers or husbands are working for Hamas. So how can I speak against them? But before they at least voice that they're against Hamas, international community by definition, cannot do much. Okay, so now the UN Security Council will meet tomorrow on Gaza hostages, which is the result of the video that that was released yesterday. They met last week on the two-state solution. Obviously, this is not supported by US and Israel. Israel has no veto in the UN, but certainly America does. And so or United States does. And so this will be the big discussion at the UNGA, right, the UN General Assembly, the 80th one, which will be happening by the end of September. So we'll see what will be there, but certainly France and Canada and the UK will be heavily advocating for a two-state solution, and Germany has joined their side as well. Now, as to India, quickly, first ever joint sail in the South China Seas underway. This is India and Philippines. They launched a naval drill or naval drills. China responded with joint exercises with Russia in Sea of Japan. And so if you pay attention and you see some videos and pictures there, kind of looks like a war zone. But again, they're practicing, but it all is not too far from each other. But, it's an interesting development. Now, as to Brazil, BP strikes oil jackpot of Brazil. So BP announced that announced their largest oil discovery in 25 years. And they said the find could reshape its post-renewable strategy shift. And as to Hong Kong, remember, they were stripping off they were taking away passports, stripping of rights of any protesters in Hong Kong. And then Secretary Rubio said, how dare you? Protesters always have the right, which was very interesting and ironic as to what the U.S. State Department does to anybody who's protesting in favor of Palestine or Gaza, right? But altogether, Hong Kong canceled now passports and banned financial aid to over a dozen overseas activists under its new national security law. Arrest warrants had already been issued, and critics warn of escalating repression. And again, U.S. is very publicly speaking against it. Maybe we should be also looking at ourselves at some point. And that's it. That's it. I promised 20 minutes. Now it's an hour. Okay, well, I'll try next time to be a bit faster. Yes, Lynn, sorry, have to run. Great show. Thank you so much. Jared says he has to entertain his cult. It's beyond ridiculous as to Trump. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I will not take any time away from you, so I will see you tomorrow at noon. I'll make sure to be faster because I want this to be, fitting your lunch break. But if you didn't catch anything, then, that you can then continue watching whenever you have time. So also soon after, I'll send a short newsletter with the video and the transcript, and also because I always write things that I'm going to say And so I will send you my little manual as to what did happen today. Now, as to Trump, there is nothing on his schedule today. At 12:30, he has a lunch with Vance. That's all. So don't anticipate a lot. Don't anticipate anything. Shut down television. Well, it's up to you. If this adds to your well-being, do. Watch the news and Trump tweets and videos and whatever. But if it does steal joy and provides anxiety, then limit your exposure to this sort of wannabe news, because none of it is really news. Okay? So, laziest president in history, says Tidy White. Exactly. Well, I joined the press of Pope Leo, and just the hours that he works and things he does every day is just so refreshing. I mean, he's 69, right? But it's just, he does so much. And this is the Pope. This is not, he's not supposed to do that much as the president of the United States does, right? Logically thinking. But again, looking forward to report on what happens there as well. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you tomorrow. Check out the newsletter that will come today, and please like it and share it. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a peaceful day.